The 911 dispatcher's voice was a flat line of practiced calm. 911, what's your emergency? A pause. Then a voice, smooth as polished granite, accustomed to command. My name is James Pittman. I'm at 114 Oceano Drive, Malibu. My wife. She's missing. When did you last see her, sir? Last night. She was emotional. We had a disagreement. Another pause, this one perfectly timed for effect. She's 8 months pregnant. The words hung in the air, a masterpiece of calculated despair. But beneath the performance, there was no tremor, no fear. Only the cold, chilling silence of a carefully closed door. Sarah Jenkins hated the smell of expensive coffee. It smelled like secrets and non-disclosure agreements. As a reporter for the Los Angeles Tribune, she'd sat in enough sterile Beverly Hills offices to know that the richer the man, the more bitter the brew. She stared across her cluttered desk at the tip that had come in through the paper's anonymous hotline. Linda Johnson Pittman. Missing. Pregnant. Chloe Vance. Aspiring actress. Signs multi-picture deal with Phoenix Pictures. Same week. Coincidence was a luxury reporters couldn't afford. Sarah's editor, a perpetually stressed man named Dave, had been skeptical. James Pittman, the real estate mogul? He owns half of downtown. His lawyers will eat you alive, Sarah. He's released a statement. He's devastated and cooperating fully. Cooperating fully means his PR team is working overtime, Sarah had countered, tapping the printout of Chloe Vance's beaming face from a trade magazine. This girl couldn't get a call back for a car commercial 3 weeks ago. Now she's headlining a studio feature? A studio that, by the way, just received a massive infusion of capital from a private equity firm, a firm where James Pittman is a silent partner. Dave had sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair, but he'd given her the green light. Just don't get us sued. Again. Her first stop wasn't the police or Pittman's fortress-like Malibu estate. It was Linda's sister, a soft-spoken pediatrician named Dr. Eleanor Vance, who lived in a modest Pasadena bungalow that felt a world away from Oceano Drive. The house smelled of lemon polish and grief. Eleanor's eyes were red-rimmed, but her gaze was sharp. "He's putting on a show," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "The concerned husband, it's disgusting." She led Sarah to a small sitting room, walls covered in photos of 2 smiling sisters. In every picture, Linda's smile was radiant, genuine. Linda wasn't unstable. She was trapped. James didn't marry a woman. He acquired an asset. She was beautiful, came from a good family, looked perfect at his fundraisers. He controlled everything, her friends, her schedule, her money. She had to ask for an allowance like a child. "Did she ever talk about leaving him?" Sarah asked, her pen poised over her notepad. Eleanor nodded, twisting a damp tissue in her hands. Constantly, especially after she got pregnant. She said the baby changed everything. It wasn't just her life anymore. She was making a plan, saving small amounts of cash. She'd contacted a divorce lawyer, one who specialized in difficult men. She told him she was leaving. That was the disagreement he mentioned. Eleanor spat, the word dripping with venom. "It was last Tuesday night. She called me, whispering from the guest bathroom. She'd told him. He didn't yell. She said that's what scared her." He went completely silent. He just looked at her and said, "You are not taking my son from me. That will never happen." The next morning, she was gone. Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. This wasn't a grieving husband. This was a man whose prized possession had tried to escape. As she drove back toward the city, the LA skyline hazy with smog, Sarah thought about Linda Pittman. She wasn't just a headline anymore. She was a woman who had been planning a future, a mother-to-be fighting for her child's freedom. Sarah pulled over and looked at the photo of Chloe Vance again, her smile wide and vacant, a starlet on the rise. Was that the face of a co-conspirator, or just another one of James Pittman's acquisitions? The price of a Hollywood dream, Sarah suspected, had just gone up, and she had a sickening feeling that Linda Pittman had been the one to pay it. James Pittman's office occupied the top floor of a skyscraper that stabbed at the Los Angeles sky. The view was breathtaking, a panorama of power that stretched from the Hollywood Hills to the Pacific. Pittman himself was part of the landscape, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his smile a weapon of disarming charm. "Ms. Jenkins, thank you for coming," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his eyes a piercing blue that seemed to assess her worth in a single glance. "I want to be as transparent as possible. Anything to help find my Linda." Sarah sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. "Mr. Pittman, your wife's sister claims you had a serious argument the night Linda disappeared. She says she was planning to leave you." The smile didn't falter. It was a masterclass in emotional deflection. "Eleanor is distraught, and I don't blame her. She's looking for someone to blame. The truth is, Linda and I had a wonderful marriage. Were there moments of stress? Of course, a pregnancy can be challenging." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Linda suffered from bouts of anxiety. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed. My fear is that she simply needed to get away, to clear her head, and she's gone somewhere without her phone." It was a perfectly crafted narrative. The fragile, unstable wife and the long-suffering, devoted husband. He was already poisoning the well. "And Chloe Vance?" Sarah asked, changing tack. "It's quite a coincidence she landed a major movie deal the same week your wife vanished." For the first time, a flicker of something cold crossed Pittman's face before being instantly suppressed. "Chloe is a talented young woman. I've made some introductions for her. Yes. I enjoy supporting the arts. Her success is her own. To imply any connection is not only libelous, it's deeply insulting to my family during this agonizing time." He was good. He was better than good. He was a predator who had learned to mimic the soothing sounds of his prey. Sarah knew she wouldn't get anything more from him directly. As she left, a lawyer with a face like a clenched fist handed her a folder. "A statement from Mr. Pittman's legal team," he said curtly. "We trust you'll report responsibly." It was a threat wrapped in legalese. That afternoon, Sarah drove to the sprawling Malibu estate. The police had finished their initial search, finding nothing. The house was a monument of glass and white stone overlooking the ocean, beautiful and sterile as a mausoleum. Sarah parked down the road, watching. She saw gardeners, pool cleaners, a private security detail. People who saw things. She found what she was looking for at a small market a few miles down the PCH. A woman with tired eyes and a nervous habit of looking over her shoulder was buying groceries. Sarah recognized her from a staff photo Eleanor had shown her. "Maria?" Sarah said softly. The woman froze, her hand hovering over a carton of milk. "I don't know you. My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm a reporter. I'm looking into Linda Pittman's disappearance. You were her housekeeper." Fear washed over Maria's face. "I quit. I don't work there anymore. I don't know anything." She tried to move past, but Sarah stood her ground. "Linda's sister said you were close with her. She said Linda confided in you." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand. He will ruin me. He will ruin my family. Just leave it alone." She grabbed her basket and practically ran from the store. But Sarah had seen the truth in her eyes. Maria didn't just know something. She was terrified of it. She was the vanishing witness. And James Pittman wasn't just covering up an affair. He was burying a crime. The foundation of his perfect life was built on a lie, and Sarah could feel the first hairline crack beginning to form. The Chateau Marmont was a Hollywood institution, a place where secrets were currency. Chloe Vance had agreed to meet Sarah there, in a secluded bungalow surrounded by lush greenery. It was a power move, designed to put Sarah on the back foot. Chloe was even more stunning in person, with the kind of manufactured perfection that casting directors adored. She wore a simple white dress, but on her it looked like couture. She sipped an iced tea, the picture of unbothered success. "I have 10 minutes, Chloe said, her voice a practiced, breathy purr. "My agent is screaming at me for even talking to you." "Then let's not waste them," Sarah replied, opening her notebook. "Tell me about your relationship with James Pittman." Chloe laughed, a tinkling sound that held no humor. "He was a mentor. He believed in my talent when no one else did." "Is that what he calls it now?" Sarah pressed, her tone sharp. "He's a married man whose pregnant wife is missing, and you, his protégé, suddenly get the role of a lifetime from a studio he's financially backing. It looks bad, Chloe." The starlet's facade cracked. A flash of genuine anger lit her eyes. "What are you implying? That I had something to do with that? That's insane. James is a generous man. My deal was in the works for months. It has nothing to do with her." She said the last word, as if it were an obscenity. "Then why can't anyone in the industry find a record of this production company, Phoenix Pictures, before last month?" Sarah countered, leaning in. "Why was it funded by a blind trust that traces back to the Cayman Islands? A trust that James Pittman has used before to hide assets during contentious business deals." Chloe's composure began to fray. Her hand trembled slightly as she set her glass down. "I'm an actress. I don't know anything about finance. I sign where my agent tells me to sign." "Your agent, who you just hired 2 weeks ago. The one who works for the same agency that represents James Pittman's corporate interests. It was a direct hit." Chloe paled. The cool, confident actress was gone, replaced by a scared young woman who had waded into waters far too deep. "James told me she was leaving him," Chloe whispered, her voice losing its polish. "He said she was unstable, that she was going to use the baby to destroy him. He said he needed to protect himself, his assets. Protect his assets." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Is that what he called his wife and unborn child?" "I didn't ask questions," Chloe snapped, her fear turning back into defiance. "This town is full of powerful men with complicated lives. You do what you have to do to get ahead. I got my shot. I'm not going to let you or anyone else take that away from me." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the stone patio. "This interview is over. My lawyer will be in touch if you print a single word of these lies." As Chloe hurried away, she fumbled with her purse. A small, jewel-encrusted keychain fell to the ground. Sarah picked it up. It was a custom piece, a small golden phoenix with ruby eyes. An extravagant gift. A thank you for a job well done. Or, Sarah thought with a grim certainty, payment for services rendered. Chloe wasn't the mastermind, but she was a link in the chain. She had rehearsed her lines for this meeting, but Sarah had pushed her off script, and in that moment of panic, she had revealed the plot. James Pittman wasn't just protecting his assets, he was liquidating a liability. Finding Maria Sanchez was like trying to catch smoke. She had paid her last month's rent in cash, disconnected her phone, and vanished. Her former neighbors in Santa Monica knew nothing. Sarah spent days chasing down cold leads, the pressure from her editor mounting with every unanswered call. James Pittman's legal team had already sent a cease and desist letter, a glossy, expensive warning shot. Sarah felt like she was hitting a wall, one built of money and influence. Then, A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Linda's sister, Eleanor. Maria's cousin works as a cleaner at my clinic, Eleanor told Sarah over the phone, her voice a hushed rush of excitement. Maria called her from a payphone. She's scared. She took her son and went to stay with family in Arizona, a little town called Bisbee. Bisbee, Arizona, was a former copper mining town nestled in the Mule Mountains, a place where people went to disappear. It was a 6-hour drive from LA, a journey from the heart of the beast to its forgotten periphery. Sarah didn't tell her editor where she was going. This was off the books. She found Maria in a small, dusty, clapboard house on a street overlooking a vast, open-pit mine. The woman who answered the door looked 10 years older than the one Sarah had seen in the market. Fear had etched deep lines around her eyes. "Please go away," Maria said, trying to shut the door. Her young son clung to her leg, peering at Sarah with wide, curious eyes. "Maria, I'm not here to cause you trouble," Sarah pleaded, putting a hand on the door. "I'm here because Linda doesn't have a voice anymore. You might be the only one who can speak for her. For her and her baby. The mention of the baby was the key." Maria's resolve crumbled. She let Sarah in. The house was sparse, but clean, the air thick with the smell of brewing coffee and fear. They sat at a small kitchen table, Maria's hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. For a long time, she was silent. Then, the words came flooding out, a torrent of confession she had been holding back for weeks. "That last night, it was bad," she began, her voice shaking. "Worse than ever. I was finishing in the kitchen. I could hear them in the living room. Mrs. Pittman, Linda. She was so calm. She told him she had a lawyer, that she was leaving, and she was taking the baby. She said she didn't want his money, just her freedom." Maria paused, taking a shuddering breath. "He didn't shout. He was quiet. I heard him say, 'You think you can just walk away?' With my son?" Then I heard a sound. A thud. And Mrs. Pittman cried out. Not a scream, just a gasp of pain. Tears streamed down Maria's face. I peeked through the door. He had her by the arms, shaking her. She was on the floor. He was standing over her, and his face, Dios mío, it was not human. It was pure rage. He looked at her belly and said, "You will not take him from me. I will burn everything to the ground before I let you do that." Maria buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. He saw me. Just for a second. He saw me in the crack of the door. The next morning, his security man came to my house. He gave me an envelope with $10,000 in cash. He said I was a good worker, but my services were no longer needed. He said my family back in Mexico would be very sad if something happened to their funding. It was not a suggestion. It was a promise. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. This was the testimony that could tear down James Pittman's empire of lies. But it was also the word of a terrified, undocumented woman against a billionaire. "Maria, will you tell the police this?" Sarah asked gently. Maria looked up, her eyes filled with a profound, soul-deep terror. "He will destroy me, señorita. He will find me. He will do to me what he did to her." Sarah knew she was right to be afraid. But as she looked at this brave, broken woman, she also knew she couldn't let that fear be the final word. She had found her vanishing witness. Now, she had to find a way to protect her long enough to make her voice heard. Armed with Maria's horrifying story, Sarah felt a surge of righteous energy. But when she discreetly presented the information to her contact at the LAPD, Detective Miller, the response was deflating. "It's a powerful story, Jenkins," Miller said, leaning back in his squeaky office chair. But legally, it's hearsay from a scared witness who fled the state. Pittman's lawyers will paint her as a disgruntled ex-employee trying to extort him. We need something solid, something he can't spin. Frustration gnawed at Sarah. Pittman was untouchable, wrapped in layers of money and legal armor. She decided to attack from a different angle. If she couldn't prove what happened to Linda's body, maybe she could prove the motive behind it. She started digging back into the deal with Phoenix Pictures, Chloe Vance's golden ticket. She spent 2 days locked in her apartment, surrounded by financial records, incorporation documents, and a truly heroic amount of caffeine. She traced the funding for Phoenix Pictures through a labyrinth of shell corporations, from the Cayman Islands to Delaware to a small, unassuming office in Van Nuys. The paper trail was designed to be impenetrable, a financial fortress. But Sarah found a crack. A name appeared on one of the secondary incorporation documents as a registered agent, a low-level financial consultant named Arthur Finch. A quick search revealed Finch had handled similar setups for Pittman Development in the past. He was a creature of habit. More importantly, a public record search showed he was going through a messy, expensive divorce. A man under financial pressure was a man who might talk. Sarah found Arthur Finch not in a high-rise office, but in a dimly lit sports bar in Tarzana, nursing a beer and staring at a basketball game with vacant eyes. He was a small, rumpled man, the kind of person who fades into the background, perfect for handling a billionaire's dirty work. "Mr. Finch," Sarah said, sliding onto the stool next to him. "I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'm a reporter. I have some questions about Phoenix Pictures." Finch flinched as if he'd been tasered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Sarah said, placing a copy of the incorporation document on the bar between them. His name was circled in red. "I know you work for James Pittman. I also know your wife's lawyer is demanding a hefty settlement. A major scandal involving your #1 client probably wouldn't help your financial situation." It was a bluff, but it landed. Finch's face went slack with panic. He looked around the bar nervously. "You don't know what you're messing with. This isn't some white-collar fraud case. I know a pregnant woman is missing, and your boss's mistress got a multi-million-dollar production deal out of nowhere," Sarah said, her voice low and intense. "Tell me what the deal was really for." Finch drained his beer in one long swallow. "It wasn't a payoff," he finally mumbled, avoiding her eyes. "Not for the girl, anyway. It was a transfer. Pittman knew his wife was leaving him. In a California divorce, she'd be entitled to half of everything. He was moving assets, hiding them. He was creating a new company, funding it with his own hidden money, and putting the actress's name on it as a front. When the divorce was settled, he'd dissolve the company, and the money would be his again. Clean. The movie deal was just the cover story to make the money's existence look legitimate. Sarah's mind reeled. The sheer, cold-blooded calculation was staggering. He wasn't just going to leave his wife. He was going to leave her with nothing. He was planning to cheat her out of her share, Sarah said, the pieces clicking into place. Finch gave a bitter, humorless laugh. That was the plan. But I guess she found out about it. Or maybe she found out about something else. He signaled the bartender for another beer. I set up the accounts. That's all I did. I saw documents, timelines. He was planning this for months. What else did you see, Arthur? He shook his head, staring into his glass. I saw the purchase of a remote property up near Castaic Lake, bought through another shell company about 2 months ago. He paid cash, said it was a long-term land investment. A cold dread settled in Sarah's stomach. A remote property. Paid in cash. An investment no one knew about. It wasn't a place to hide his money. It was a place to hide something else. The money trail hadn't just led her to the motive. It had led her to the gravesite. The reversal was swift and brutal. Sarah took her findings, Maria's testimony, the financial trail, the existence of the Castaic Lake property, and published a bombshell article in the Tribune. The story exploded online, a viral sensation of outrage and speculation. For a moment, it felt like victory. Then, the empire struck back. James Pittman didn't just issue a denial. He launched an all-out war. He appeared on a national morning show, his face a mask of dignified grief. He painted Sarah as a reckless sensationalist, a vulture picking at his family's tragedy for clicks. He portrayed Linda as a troubled woman he had tried desperately to help. He even produced a forged letter, supposedly from Linda, alluding to her desire to run away and start over. His lawyers filed a massive defamation lawsuit against Sarah and the Tribune. His PR team worked around the clock, feeding friendly media outlets a counter-narrative. Chloe Vance, coached to perfection, gave a tearful interview, calling Sarah's article a disgusting fabrication, and professing her unwavering belief in James's innocence. Worst of all, he went after the witnesses. A story appeared in a rival paper detailing Arthur Finch's messy divorce and accusing him of embezzlement from a former client, a story clearly planted by Pittman's team. Finch immediately recanted his statement to Sarah, claiming she had harassed him and twisted his words. And Maria, they found her. An anonymous tip was made to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Maria and her son were picked up in a raid. She was in a detention center, facing deportation. Her testimony was now worthless, the word of a so-called illegal alien with a grudge. Sarah was reeling. Her editor, Dave, was facing immense pressure from the paper's owners. They want to settle, Sarah. They want to print a retraction. Your career is on the line here. His pockets are deeper than God's. She felt the walls closing in. The public, swayed by Pittman's media blitz, was turning against her. The comments on her article were filled with vitriol, accusing her of destroying an innocent man. She had shown her hand, and he had countered with a royal flush of power and deceit. He hadn't just denied her story, he had systematically dismantled it, witness by witness, fact by fact, until she was the one who looked like the liar. One evening, sitting alone in her apartment, the city lights twinkling mockingly outside, Sarah felt a profound sense of despair. She had failed Linda. She had made things worse for Maria. Pittman was going to get away with it. He was too rich, too powerful, too ruthless. She pulled out all her notes, spreading them across the floor, a chaotic map of her investigation. She stared at the picture of Chloe Vance, her perfect, lying face. Something Finch had said echoed in her mind. It wasn't a payoff. Not for the girl, anyway. What did that mean? The production deal was the cover story for the money transfer. But why Chloe? Why her specifically? There were thousands of aspiring actresses in LA. Why was she so important to this whole charade? Sarah's eyes fell on the photo she'd taken of the keychain Chloe had dropped at the Chateau Marmont, the golden phoenix with ruby eyes. It was an expensive custom piece. She had assumed it was a gift. But what if it wasn't? On a hunch, she started searching for high-end custom jewelers in Beverly Hills. It was a long shot. But after hours of calling, she found a jeweler who recognized the design. "Ah yes, the phoenix pendant," the man said, his voice smooth and discreet. "A unique commission. The client wanted a duplicate of a piece she already owned. Said she was sentimental." "Who was the client?" Sarah asked, her heart hammering. "Let me check the records. Here we are. The original piece was purchased over a year ago. A gift from Mr. James Pittman to Ms. Linda Johnson Pittman." The air left Sarah's lungs. It was Linda's. The phoenix wasn't a gift for Chloe. It was a prop. Chloe wasn't just playing the role of a starlet. She was playing the role of Linda. The entire deception was more intricate, more personal, more twisted than she could have ever imagined. Chloe didn't just have a contract, she had Linda's jewelry. And what else did she have? In that moment, Sarah knew. The key to everything wasn't with the witness who saw the crime, but with the woman who was paid to help erase the victim. The knowledge that Chloe was wearing a copy of Linda's jewelry rewired the entire investigation for Sarah. This wasn't just a financial cover-up, it was a psychological one. James was replacing his wife, piece by piece, with a younger, more compliant model. He wasn't just hiding a crime, he was rewriting reality. This gave Sarah new leverage. She called Chloe, her voice calm and steady. "I know about the Phoenix keychain, Chloe. I know it was Linda's. I know he had a copy made for you. What else of Linda's did he give you? Her clothes? Her car? Did he ask you to practice her signature?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a choked silence. Sarah had hit a nerve. "Meet me," Sarah said. "An hour. The coffee shop on Larchmont. Come alone. This is your one and only chance to get out in front of this." Chloe was there, huddled in a corner booth, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf that did little to hide her terror. The confident starlet was gone, replaced by a ghost. "He's crazy," Chloe whispered, as soon as Sarah sat down. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her cup. "I thought he was just controlling. But this is something else." "Tell me everything," Sarah commanded. Chloe began to talk, the words spilling out in a desperate rush. The movie deal was a sham, just as Finch had said. But there was more. James had become obsessed with her. He made her dye her hair closer to Linda's shade. He bought her clothes from the same designers Linda preferred. The Phoenix keychain was the final, terrifying straw. "The night Linda disappeared," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a near-inaudible whisper. "He called me. He was different. Not his usual calm, collected self. He was agitated, breathing heavily. He said, 'It's done. The problem is handled. Now you just need to be ready to play your part.'" I thought he meant the movie deal. I thought he meant he'd finalized the divorce. Sarah leaned closer. "Did he say anything else?" Chloe's eyes darted around the coffee shop. "He was ranting. He said she'd threatened to go to the press about his business dealings, about the fraud. He said she thought she could ruin me. Nobody ruins me. And then he said something I'll never forget." She took a shaky breath. He said, "I took her up to the new property, to our special place. She loved the view. It's the last thing she'll ever see." The confession hung in the air between them, ugly and undeniable. It was circumstantial, but it placed him at the remote property with his wife on the night she vanished, and it provided a chilling motive beyond the divorce. "Why are you telling me this now, Chloe?" Sarah asked, her gaze unwavering. "Because yesterday, one of his lawyers visited me," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "He gave me a new script. It was a statement for the police, a false alibi for James. It said I was with him that whole night. He wants me to perjure myself. He told me that my contract has a morality clause, and if I don't cooperate, my career, my reputation, everything will be gone. He said, 'You're with him, or you're under him.' I realized then, I'm not his partner. I'm just his next victim." She had been bought and paid for, and now her owner was coming to collect. "Do you have any proof of that phone call?" Sarah asked, her mind racing. Chloe hesitated, then nodded slowly. I record all my calls with agents and producers. It's a habit, to protect myself from bad deals. I was so scared after he called, I never deleted it. Sarah felt a jolt of adrenaline, sharp and fierce. It was the missing piece, the one thing James Pittman couldn't spin, couldn't buy, couldn't bury. "Give it to me, Chloe," Sarah said. "Give it to me, and I can give you a way out. Not a perfect way, but a path back to your own life. Not the one he's built for you." Chloe looked at Sarah, her face a battleground of fear and a desperate, burgeoning hope. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, slim smartphone, placing it on the table between them. It was the devil's bargain, her Hollywood dream in exchange for her soul. And she had finally chosen her soul. Sarah didn't go to the LAPD. Miller was a good cop, but the department was compromised by Pittman's influence. Instead, she went to the one place she knew was hungry enough and powerful enough to take on a titan like James Pittman, the U.S. Attorney's Office. She met with an assistant U.S. attorney named Mark Sandoval, a sharp, ambitious prosecutor who had made a name for himself taking down corrupt politicians. In his sterile federal office, Sarah laid out everything. Maria's eyewitness account of the assault, the fraudulent financial trail leading to Phoenix Pictures, the purchase of the Castaic Lake property, and finally, Chloe Vance's recording. She played the audio file. James Pittman's voice filled the quiet room, agitated and raw, stripped of its usual polished charm. "It's done. The problem is handled. She thought she could ruin me. Nobody ruins me. I took her up to the new property. It's the last thing she'll ever see." Sandoval listened, his face impassive. When it was over, he was silent for a full minute. Then he looked at Sarah and gave a single, sharp nod. "We have him." The fallout was immediate and overwhelming. Armed with a federal warrant, FBI agents, not LAPD, descended on the Castaic Lake property. It was a large, undeveloped parcel of land, rugged and isolated, with a single, half-finished foundation for a house overlooking the water. It was a beautiful, lonely place to hide a terrible secret. The media got wind of the raid, and suddenly news helicopters were circling overhead like vultures. Sarah stood on the perimeter with her editor, Dave, who now looked at her with a mixture of awe and terror. The narrative had flipped. James Pittman's carefully constructed image was shattering in real time. For hours, the forensic teams worked under the harsh California sun. They brought in ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs. Sarah's stomach was in knots. This was the moment of truth. If they found nothing, she was finished. Pittman would crush her. Then a shout went up from the team near the foundation. The dogs were barking, frantically digging at a patch of freshly disturbed earth, tucked away behind a retaining wall. The agents swarmed the area. They dug carefully, painstakingly. Sarah watched through a pair of binoculars, her heart pounding against her ribs. She saw them pull away a thick tarp. Underneath it, something else. It was small, a wooden box, a child's toy chest, intricately carved. A detective opened it. Sarah couldn't see what was inside, but she saw the man recoil, turning away to compose himself. Another agent gently closed the lid. It wasn't what they were looking for, but it was a message. A sick, twisted memorial from a man who saw his own son as a possession. The digging continued, and then, late in the afternoon, they found her. Linda Johnson Pittman was buried in the cold, hard dirt of the land her husband had bought to be their special place. That evening, FBI agents arrived at Pittman's downtown office. They didn't knock. They streamed out of black SUVs, wearing tactical vests, and strode into the lobby of his skyscraper, their faces grim and determined. The cameras were rolling as they escorted a stunned James Pittman out in handcuffs. The mask was finally gone. There was no charm, no control, just the blank, impotent rage of a monster who had been cornered He looked directly into a news camera, his eyes searching, and Sarah knew he was looking for her. He had been beaten, and he knew exactly who had done it. The siege was over. The king had fallen. The trial of James Pittman was a media circus. It was the story of the decade: wealth, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder. But for Sarah, sitting in the courtroom every day, it was about one thing: getting justice for Linda. The prosecution, led by Mark Sandoval, was methodical. They built their case brick by brick. They brought in Arthur Finch, who, now free from Pittman's influence, detailed the entire financial scheme to defraud Linda in the divorce. They put Chloe Vance on the stand. She was no longer a starlet. She was a woman haunted by her choices. With a trembling voice, she told the jury about Pittman's manipulation, his obsession, and the terrifying phone call. When Sandoval played the recording, a collective gasp went through the courtroom. Pittman's own words, dripping with rage and possession, condemned him. The most powerful moment came when Maria Sanchez testified. The U.S. Attorney's Office had granted her immunity and protection in exchange for her testimony. She walked to the stand with a quiet dignity, no longer a frightened refugee, but a woman reclaiming her voice. She looked directly at James Pittman and described the brutal assault she had witnessed, her voice clear and unwavering. She spoke of Linda's kindness, of her dreams for her baby. She gave Linda the voice she no longer had. Pittman's defense was aggressive but hollow. They tried to paint Chloe as a scorned lover, Maria as an opportunist, and Sarah as a fame-hungry journalist. But they couldn't explain away the recording. They couldn't explain away the body buried on his property. Sarah watched James throughout the trial. He remained impassive, arrogant, convinced his power would still somehow save him. He seemed to believe he was the real victim, a man brought low by treacherous women. The jury was out for less than 6 hours. The verdict came back: guilty, on all counts, murder in the first degree. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled. Sarah's knees washed over her. Across the courtroom, she met Eleanor's gaze. Linda's sister was crying silently, tears of grief and gratitude. Justice hadn't healed the wound, but it had cauterized it. It was an ending. A final, definitive statement that Linda's life had mattered. Weeks later, Sarah visited Maria at a small apartment secured for her by the Witness Protection Program. Her son was playing with toys on the floor, laughing freely. "You're safe now," Sarah said. "Because of you," Maria replied, her eyes full of warmth. "You saw me when everyone else looked away. You gave me courage." Sarah left feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She hadn't just broken a story. She had helped restore a small piece of the world's moral balance. Her last stop was the coast. She drove out to a bluff overlooking the Pacific, not far from the house where Linda had lived. The ocean was vast and endless. She thought about Linda, a woman she'd never met but had come to know so intimately. She thought about her resilience, her quiet fight for freedom. The story was over. But the echoes of Linda's strength, of Mariah's courage, and of Chloe's difficult redemption would stay with her forever. She had done more than write a headline. She had ensured a legacy. In the end, justice found its way through the labyrinth of power and money. James Pittman will spend the rest of his life in a prison cell, a king confined to a concrete box. Chloe Vance, after cooperating fully, received a reduced sentence for her role in the financial cover-up. She left Hollywood behind, seeking a quiet life far from the spotlight she once craved. Maria and her son were granted asylum, free to build a new life on the foundation of her incredible bravery. And Sarah Jenkins? She wrote a book about Linda's story, a tribute to the woman whose fight for freedom cost her everything but inspired so many. It became a testament to the fact that no one is truly untouchable, that truth can be a formidable weapon, and that one person's voice, amplified by courage, can indeed topple an empire. Linda Johnson, Pittman got her justice, and in doing so, gave countless other women a renewed sense of hope and the strength to find their own second chances.